A pale yellow-gray ceramic particulate exists with a synthesis cost of exactly $14.60 per kilogram. It is described as having the mechanical potential to permanently resolve an approaching global energy crisis. At the same time, a petroleum refining cartel valued at approximately $2.8 trillion is allegedly deploying hundreds of millions in undeclared funding to suppress awareness of its designation. Visualize the intake system of a conventional heavy-duty diesel engine. The standard liquid fuel line is fully removed, completely stripped out. In its place is a porous, honeycomb-structured lattice layered with this ceramic particulate. The system is then subjected to intense solar concentration, raising temperatures to 1500 degrees Celsius. At this stage, the material is said to behave in an unusual way. It appears to breathe. As surrounding air passes through the lattice structure, extreme heat distorts the crystal framework of the dust, producing a localized microscopic condition that strongly attracts oxygen. When trace carbon dioxide in the air interacts with the heated ceramic surface, a reaction occurs in which oxygen is forcibly separated from carbon dioxide molecules. The oxygen becomes trapped within the crystal structure, while carbon monoxide is released as a byproduct. This results in a combustible gaseous precursor generated directly from ambient air at minimal cost. The process is framed as producing fuel from atmosphere alone. No offshore drilling operations, no extraction platforms in deep waters, no pipeline infrastructure across borders, only atmospheric intake, solar concentration, and a localized thermochemical cycle. A closed loop system is described. Claims suggest the global extraction industry is not primarily threatened by electric vehicles or solar infrastructure, as those sectors are already integrated into rare earth and lithium supply chains. Instead, the true disruption is described as decentralization, removing geographic control over energy resources entirely. Current petroleum economics are said to operate with approximately 64% gross margin, derived from the necessity of sourcing crude oil from fixed geographic reservoirs under controlled territories. These locations enforce extraction costs, transport fees, and refining charges. A standard maritime crude tanker is described as consuming exactly 63,000 gallons of low-grade bunker fuel per day while transporting crude from Middle Eastern ports to refineries in Texas. The inefficiency of this logistics chain is highlighted, including a loss of 12.4% of total energy potential during transit alone. The system is portrayed as a continuous dependency loop, where energy consumption is required simply to maintain energy supply chains. Without payment, transportation, heating, and food distribution systems would cease operation. In contrast, decentralized synthetic fuel generation is described as possible at the scale of small reactors and parabolic solar concentrators, potentially enabling localized production of combustible gas from air itself at minimal cost. This is presented as a structural threat to existing fuel markets. The narrative escalates into claims that this thermochemical process is not theoretical. It is described as involving a material identified as cerium-4 oxide, capable of enabling the reaction under concentrated heat conditions. This reaction is said to undermine large biofuel production systems valued at approximately $120 billion, which rely on extensive farmland, fertilizers, and subsidies for corn-based ethanol production. Instead of large agricultural infrastructure, the system is described as requiring only a compact reactor and focused sunlight. This difference is framed as an economic collapse scenario for existing fuel production models. It is asserted that energy authorities in major oil-producing regions quietly recognize this potential disruption and consider it a systemic threat. If atmospheric-derived diesel-like fuel became widely accessible, traditional geopolitical energy leverage would rapidly diminish. The explanation then shifts to a historical origin point 15 years earlier, tracing the discovery back to a metallurgical laboratory in Stuttgart, Germany. On the 14th of November 2011, inside a controlled laboratory environment, a routine calibration error allegedly triggered an unexpected thermodynamic event. Within room 402 of a shielded metallurgical facility, researchers were conducting tests on rare earth oxide samples. The equipment involved was a high vacuum induction furnace manufactured by Shimadzu, calibrated to maintain a vacuum of 10 to the -6 millibar. The initial objective was to measure thermal expansion behavior of high-purity cerium dioxide pellets. At 9:42 p.m., an electrical surge bypassed backup safety systems, causing tungsten heating elements to exceed safety limits by 324 degrees, reaching approximately 1,524 degrees Celsius. Emergency shutdown was attempted, but not completed in time. Inside the observation chamber, the ceramic pellets did not melt in a conventional manner. Instead, they underwent a rapid phase transformation, releasing oxygen from their crystal lattice and shifting from a cerium-4 oxidation state to a cerium-3 state. The material changed to a darker metallic gray. This behavior is described as a non-stoichiometric oxygen vacancy condition. To stabilize the chamber, a purge gas containing 400 parts per million carbon dioxide was introduced. Under normal expectations, carbon dioxide would act as an inert cooling medium. Instead, an intense reaction occurred. Within 1.8 seconds, the oxygen was stripped from carbon dioxide molecules, restoring the ceramic to its original state and converting the gas output into carbon monoxide. Mass spectrometry confirmed a molecular reading of 28 atomic mass units corresponding to carbon monoxide. Researchers noted that the process showed no measurable degradation of the material. Unlike conventional catalysts such as platinum, rhodium, or palladium, which degrade after fewer than 3,000 thermal cycles due to contamination and surface blockage, this ceramic structure maintained stability. The reaction was not occurring on surface catalytic sites, but throughout the bulk crystalline lattice. It functioned as a repeating oxygen exchange mechanism, expanding and contracting like a mechanical respiratory system. Data indicated the material could undergo more than 50,000 cycles without measurable efficiency loss. This discovery suggested a mechanism capable of converting atmospheric gases into combustible precursors using only heat, without external electrical input. The laboratory leadership reportedly recognized the geopolitical implications immediately. Scaling such a system into modular reactors could enable independent fuel production across industrial and residential environments. Within 48 hours of the experiment, the laboratory's digital infrastructure was subjected to a highly targeted and total data erasure event. The physical logbooks were discreetly placed under a restrictive industrial security clause within the European Union framework. This happened less than 300 miles away from a glass-enclosed boardroom in Frankfurt. Inside that room, executives of a dominant multinational energy distribution syndicate were reviewing early mass spectrometer outputs. Their financial modeling teams had already derived the precise economic consequence of letting this ceramic anomaly escape controlled conditions. To understand why certain technologies are contained, the investigation follows financial documentation into the accounting systems of the agricultural biofuel network. This is a $120 billion syndicate presenting itself as sustainable progress while operating one of the most resource-intensive land control systems ever built. The core arithmetic of modern ethanol production reveals the structure clearly. Under the renewable fuel standard enforced by the Energy Policy Act of 2005, fuel distributors are required to mix billions of gallons of corn-based ethanol into national gasoline supplies each year. This regulation constructs an artificially guaranteed market. As a result, more than 92 million acres of prime agricultural soil are permanently allocated to fuel crops instead of food production. The system's efficiency, when measured physically, collapses under scrutiny. Producing a single gallon of corn ethanol requires approximately 3.8 gallons of fresh water, 0.7 bushels of corn, and 28,000 British thermal units of fossil-derived energy to operate industrial heating systems. When tractor fuel consumption, long-distance logistics, and chemical refinery operations are included, the net energy return stabilizes at roughly 1.3 to 1. The system produces marginal energy gain while generating extreme financial yield. The primary output is not fuel itself, but the subsidy mechanism supporting it. Between 1995 and 24, federal programs distributed exactly $47.8 billion in direct commodity support to corn production systems. This capital inflow artificially sustains land valuation, locking agricultural operators into continuous debt cycles dependent on patented seed systems and synthetic nitrogen fertilizer purchases measured in millions of metric tons annually. Into this environment enters the Stuttgart ceramic anomaly. Cerium oxide-based solar reactors detach liquid fuel synthesis from terrestrial land use entirely. No agricultural acreage is required. No synthetic fertilizer inputs are needed. No freshwater consumption occurs. A modular ceramic reactor, array occupying the footprint of a standard suburban warehouse, is described as capable of matching the daily fuel output of a 2,500-acre industrial corn operation. These vacancies function as an engineered absorption matrix. When carbon dioxide enters the system, the lattice engages immediately. At extreme temperature, carbon dioxide bonds are already weakened, with carbon-oxygen double bonds stretched near their limit. Upon contact, oxygen atoms are forcibly removed from carbon dioxide molecules in less than 300 picoseconds. The vacancies are filled instantly as oxygen is absorbed back into the lattice. Cerium returns to its 4+ state, contracting to its original geometry. The gas exiting the system is no longer carbon dioxide, but carbon monoxide, a highly reactive combustible precursor. This entire exchange occurs without additives, solvents, or material degradation. Cerium oxide does not operate like conventional catalysts, such as platinum, rhodium, or palladium, which degrade after fewer than 3,000 thermal cycles due to surface contamination. Instead, the reaction occurs throughout the bulk crystalline structure. It behaves as a repeating thermodynamic engine, continuously cycling oxygen in and out of its lattice structure. Testing indicates more than 50,000 cycles with negligible efficiency loss. This mechanism demonstrates a pathway for converting atmospheric gases into fuel precursors using only thermal energy input. No electrical energy input is required, only controlled heat. The implications extend into established assumptions in industrial chemistry, particularly the belief that carbon dioxide conversion into high-energy fuels requires massive electrical input and is economically unfeasible. This lattice structure challenges that assumption by relying solely on atomic geometry and concentrated solar heat. Modern internal combustion systems cannot operate on raw carbon monoxide alone. A liquid hydrocarbon is required. Premium diesel remains the necessary output state. The transition between gaseous precursor and usable fuel leads into a lesser-known historical framework dating back exactly 101 years, during the 1925 European industrial expansion period. Carbon monoxide has already been extracted from atmospheric processing, yet it cannot be directly used in heavy transport engines. It must be transformed into dense liquid hydrocarbons. This is where the established petroleum narrative begins to fracture. The conversion process was not a recent innovation from modern laboratories or technology firms. It was established precisely 101 years ago at the Kaiser Wilhelm Institute for Coal Research in Muheim, Germany in 1925. Two chemists, Franz Fischer and Hans Tropsch, developed a catalytic mechanism that effectively functions as a molecular assembly system, linking gas molecules into liquid fuel structures through controlled synthesis. This method, known as Fischer-Tropsch synthesis, remains one of the most strategically controlled industrial processes in modern chemical engineering. The operational sequence begins with carbon monoxide gas produced from the cerium oxide solar reactor. This gas is combined with hydrogen. The mixture is introduced into a pressurized steel reactor tube containing a specialized porous catalyst. Typically, this includes cobalt or iron microstructures doped with exactly 0.5% potassium to enhance reaction speed. The system is maintained at a precise temperature of 220 degrees Celsius and a pressure of 25 standard atmospheres. Inside this environment, gas molecules collide with the catalyst surface, initiating a structured breakdown and recombination process. The catalyst acts as a controlled cleavage surface. Carbon monoxide is split into its elemental components. Oxygen immediately binds with hydrogen, forming water. Carbon atoms remain active on the catalyst surface. These carbon atoms begin linking sequentially, forming extended molecular chains. Carbon connects to carbon repeatedly in linear formation. As the chain length reaches approximately 10 to 15 carbon atoms, molecular mass increases to the point where gaseous stability is lost. At this threshold, the synthetic hydrocarbons condense into liquid form. Diesel fuel begins to separate from the gas stream and collect as a liquid product. It emerges clear, free from sulfur contamination and heavy metal residues commonly present in crude oil refinement. The resulting synthetic diesel exhibits higher combustion efficiency and cleaner burn characteristics compared to a conventional petroleum-derived fuel. The reaction can be summarized simply. Carbon monoxide combined with hydrogen yields liquid fuel and water. No drilling operations are required. No hydraulic fracturing is involved. No maritime transport or spill risk is introduced. This synthesis method is not theoretical. By 1944, it was deployed at industrial scale by a nation cut off from conventional oil supplies. Approximately 124,000 barrels of synthetic fuel were produced daily, sustaining mechanized military logistics across Europe. After the war concluded, the technology did not remain in widespread commercial use. In the late 1940s, global crude oil production expanded rapidly due to newly accessible reserves in the Middle East. This shift altered global energy economics. Large multinational petroleum consortiums recognized that widespread adoption of decentralized Fischer-Tropsch systems would eliminate geographic control over fuel production. As a result, financial and institutional strategies were deployed to contain the technology within limited industrial and military applications. Patent portfolios covering catalyst optimization were consolidated through acquisitions. Academic studies were directed toward emphasizing inefficiency and high production cost. Economic models were structured to discourage investment in distributed synthetic fuel infrastructure. The technology itself was not destroyed. It was enclosed within controlled intellectual property systems and restricted from broad deployment. The cerium oxide system alters this equation by supplying carbon monoxide at minimal marginal cost. When combined with Fischer-Tropsch synthesis, it forms a complete closed-loop fuel generation cycle capable of operating independent of geological fuel sources. This leads directly into modern institutional enforcement mechanisms designed to prevent such systems from emerging at scale. Any attempt to construct a functional reactor today triggers a coordinated legal response framework. This does not involve physical intervention, but rather regulatory and intellectual property enforcement systems. In modern patent classification systems, United States Patent Class 423, Subclass 438, covers solid-state metal oxide thermochemical reduction. Between 2012 and 2024, over 400 targeted patents related to cerium lattice structures and Fischer-Tropsch catalyst enhancement were acquired through complex offshore holding structures and private equity networks. These acquisitions are not intended for production. They function as legal containment barriers, forming an overlapping patent grid designed to obstruct independent development. This strategy is commonly referred to as catch and kill. When a startup attempts to commercialize a cerium-based solar reactor, it is immediately subjected to multiple simultaneous legal challenges across jurisdictions. Litigation costs average $3.2 million per case.